in the previous video, I wanted to loop you guys in on everything that happened with the STi, and I realized honestly as I was recording it that I just missed a ton of stuff on it. So I thought we would do a proper 2019 STi review, the full send-off, since I did have that car from 8-9 miles on the dash all the way to a little bit over 50,000 miles. So this video literally will cover everything from the moment that I bought it, the enjoyment that I got out of it, and then all the way to the moment that I sold it, and the process, everything of course in the middle. It was one of my friends that turned me into getting the original WRX. So I had a 2018 WRX for quite some time, and I kind of realized after about a year, you know what, I want to experience the STi. The engine is different, transmission, brakes, I mean, you name it, it's more performance tuned. So let's see what this thing's got. I went to the dealership, test drove it, automatically fell in love with it, and walked out with a brand new black 2019 STi at the time. And like I said, only had 9 miles on the dash when I first purchased it. So for quite some time, I mean, the first probably 10,000 miles, I mean, all I did was just take it back in, since it had warranty and free oil changes. Got the oil changes done there. Of course, always kind of checked here and there to make sure nothing was being, terribly done to it. And yeah, everything honestly was great. Kept checking the oil, a level, and at that time, everything was, like I said, perfect, smooth. Had the car seat in the back. Family and I, we enjoyed driving non-stop with that car. And we turned it into pretty much kind of a daily driven family car. I know a lot of people, as soon as they get a car and they want to start modifying it, I actually want to enjoy the car for what it is, the way that it came out of the factory. And so to be honest, like the first probably 10,000-ish miles, I didn't even put window tints on. I wanted the experience exactly as it was. And it drove great. I mean, it was perfect. I took off a bunch of stuff off of my 2018 WRX, so I, of course, wanted to put it on there, but I wanted that experience of the car as it was meant to be. So it was right at that mileage when I actually started doing some modifications to the car. So of course, a few things. I mean, usually the first thing that I do is put wheels and tires on it, but I actually really liked the design of it. And this was the pure kind of, blackish wheel that they had before they went into the machine spoke kind of finish. So I actually had no desire to change it. I mean, I just wish the offset was a little bit more negative the whole time, just so that it would kind of stick flush with the fenders. But overall, like I said, I thought the wheel choice was pretty awesome. I also decided to put the Remark exhaust on there. And, just looking at a few reviews, people go in with just the muffler delete or doing the whole mid pipe as well. I decided to just go ahead and do the whole mid pipe and eliminate the resonators. And to be honest, I really liked it, but I have a young child in the car, and at certain speeds, it would drone pretty bad. The droning coupled with the extreme rattling of that car drove me kind of crazy. It wasn't, for me personally, it wasn't the droning, it was the rattling. I mean, everything was just shaking in the car, and I couldn't believe, a vehicle with less than 20,000 miles on it to be rattling that much. So I went a little berserk. You can probably watch that entire series if you choose to, but took apart the entire interior and pretty much dynamited everything. So I mean, it was the floors, the doors, definitely the trunk. It pretty much got rid of all the rattles. I mean, there were a couple of, here and there from the front dash, so I was getting ready to do that. The front pillars as well were rattling. I already did those. And the car felt super sturdy. I mean, you go on the outside of the car and you tap the metal, and I mean, it just feels like a built car. I know what you guys are going to say as far as the, how much weight was added. I really didn't care too much. I mean, I just wanted to get rid of that rattling as much as possible. The interior quality as well improved significantly. It feels pretty close to my 21 STi, the one I'm driving right now, a limited edition. Got rid of so much road noise that I was honestly contemplating even doing the roof, but at the end decided against it. So I took that car a few times actually to Florida, and car drove perfectly. I mean, on some longer, like 350 mile, one-way stretches. We enjoyed our time down there. I mean, it was, I honestly thought that I would never get rid of that car. Every single morning I would go to work and I would map out pretty much a different drive and really just take my time getting there for the just pure driving experience. And then right at about 20,000 or so miles, I got a check engine light. So it was right at the first time, I think, that I didn't check the oil level. Up until that point, everything has been, pretty spot on, so I kind of got comfortable with it. And it basically said, that oil was way too low. Filled it up, drove it a little bit, check engine light wouldn't go. I took it to the dealership, and they stated most likely we need to replace an oil control valve. At this point, I can't remember if it was the left or the right oil control valve, but they replaced one of them, give it back to me, and I honestly thought it went away. I checked the oil levels, it seemed pretty normal, but after about 5,000-6,000 miles, again, low oil. So at that point, I started regularly checking the oil to make sure that it wasn't dipping below. So I took it back to the dealership and I told them, I said, I want a new engine. So it should not be burning this much oil, especially for the way that I drive this car. But if I was on the track and just abusing the crap out of it, of course I can see it. But even shifting gears, with the exception of the first gear being above 3,000 RPM, majority of the time I'm in the 2 to 2,500,000 RPM range. So they said, oh no, we can't do that just yet. STIs burn oil, blah, blah, blah. But I was pretty persistent, and they came back and they said, we need to replace, one of your sprockets. We think that's what it is. So they did. They replaced the sprocket, drove it again for a couple of thousand miles. I see that the engine is still burning oil, and so I'm constantly just filling it back up. And then another check engine light comes back. They say, oh, it's sprocket number 2 now that we have to replace. Get sprocket number 2 replaced. At that point, I'm telling them how much oil I'm filling up. They decide to grab the oil, send it off, and they say, yep, I think we're going to go ahead and submit it to Subaru of North America to see if we can get you warranted and a brand new engine. So it takes some time for Subaru North America to respond. Finally, they do. At that point, they say, no, we need to replace another oil control valve first, because that's probably the issue. So they replace it. Of course, it's not. I drive it 500-600 miles. Check engine light comes back again. Then they come back and say, oh, you need to replace, the third sprocket now. So I replaced the third sprocket. And at that point, the car was running, no more check engine lights, but it was burning so much oil that I was literally filling up every, 500 miles or so, kept filling up and adding, half a quart. So about 1,000 miles, I was adding a full quart of oil. Now we're in the 45-ish thousand mile range already, still waiting on Subaru of North America to come back. I drive it back to the dealership. Trying to get an update. They replaced the oil, and I was pretty much sent on my way until some kind of decision is made. So at that point, I don't know if they were trying to wait till the 60,000 mile mark where I'm not going to have a warranty on the engine anymore. I was hoping not. I never actually asked that question if it's warrantyable, considering that I put in the request that 30,000-40,000 miles, I can't even remember at this point, to get my engine warranted. But honestly, I didn't want to take a chance. So I had one of two options. Either I was going to completely build the engine, and so I found a block, found all the internals, pretty much, every single thing. It would have been a brand new engine. And so I scoped it out. It was right at 17,000 to do the full build. And I started looking at all of the shops around it, who could tune it. And so just looking at some of the comparables, I would have been pushing about 800 horsepower to the wheels with that full build. So that was option A, and it would have been a good option. And option B was to sell the car and try doing something a little bit different for about a year, just to see if I still have that same passion for the car that I've had this entire time, or whether I was just attached to that specific car at the time. So I had a business from 2012 to 2019 called First Choice Wheels and Tires. And it was an e-commerce platform, and we just honestly sold wheels and tires on there. And we had quite a bunch of relationships with everybody, and one of the conversion shops actually gave us their 2012 Sierra 2500 at the time to take to one of the shows that we were doing. And that thing was massive. It had a 7-inch lift on it, crazy kind of paint job, a few other kind of engine modifications. And I always said, if I'm not driving a lowered car like this one, what I want to do is actually buy some kind of monster truck like this and give it a shot. And so it was right at the height of COVID season, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and see what the trade-in value for this car is. And if it's good enough, I'm going to sell it, and then I'm going to buy that 2500. And of course, it's not a forever truck or a forever car. Like, I'll go ahead and sell it in a year if I don't like it that much, and if I'm still just wanting to drive the STi. I think you can kind of see, considering I'm driving the 21 STi, where that went. So I did. Found a really great trade-in, traded it in. Took a while for me to actually get the 2500 because I wanted it in an AT4 package. And to be honest, that truck was a monster. That was one of those vehicles where I automatically started doing some modifications. I already had a 2-inch lift, so I knew what was going to clear on it. Got some 20-inch Hostile wheels put on with some Mickey Thompson tires. Got the bed cover. And honestly, that truck didn't need much more than that. And I drove it, and my son absolutely loved it. Didn't even have a side step, so both my wife and my son had to figure out how to jump into that truck. But it was great. I mean, I had a lot of fun, and to be honest, if it wasn't for the 2022 model being changed over on the interior, I probably would have kept that truck and just bought an additional STi on top of it. So we took that truck through Atlanta, drove it downtown. I mean, all the streets are tight, squeezing through. My wife always freaking out. But I love that kind of driving experience as well. The only real problem is it wasn't a manual transmission, and honestly, nothing really kind of compares to the STi from this type of driving experience. So I figured, since they discontinued the STi, I'm going to go ahead and buy the last model year that they had it and just drive it. And that's what I did. Traded in the truck, bought the STi, figured I would put on my old Remark exhaust on it, kept it at my dad's shop. He didn't think I was going to buy another STi. He threw the old one away, so I had to buy a new exhaust from Remark, which again is money well spent. But even after all of that, I still kind of wish I would have kept the other one as well and just fully built it. It was at that point that I kind of fully understood why people go through that much level of punishment on a vehicle that honestly most people have some issues with one way or another, and that's really because there's nothing quite like it. A few months after owning the truck, I think I was like right at the 6-month mark, I see on my phone that Subaru of North America is calling me. Well, that's interesting. So I pick up and they say, hey, we have your vehicle here at this dealership, and they just honestly wanted to give me an update on where the process of getting this new engine was. I did feel like that guy, and I actually apologized to the woman afterwards, but I told her the experience and how terrible it was, and I couldn't believe that Subaru would do this, considering, especially with the STi, it's such a loyal kind of base that you're going to be pushing customers away from it. But I guess they know something that I don't, considering I'm, again, driving the STi. This time around, of course, if it goes like the other one did, there's really not going to be an issue. I'm just going to build this car, and that'll be that. One of the biggest things that I honestly didn't like about that experience, and most people like this, is I absolutely hated that as soon as I pull up to the dealership, everybody knows me by name. That just shows you how many times I've been to that same dealership. But the good part is there's going to be a lot more STi content. We definitely have to do this 2019 STi review. Now let's see how the first 10,000 miles of this one went.